The Galactic Council was ancient, a body of representatives from countless alien species. For centuries, they had controlled the fate of planets across the galaxy. Each species in the Council had its own unique view of the universe. Some were peaceful, seeking only to maintain order. Others were violent, driven by power and conquest. Together, they formed a body that held the power to decide the future of entire civilizations. Earth had always been seen as insignificant. A small, blue planet on the edge of the Milky Way, inhabited by a species that was constantly at war with itself. The aliens in the Galactic Council had long dismissed humans as primitive, unable to contribute to the greater good of the galaxy. But that was about to change. For months, the Council had debated the fate of Earth. The peaceful species argued that humanity was too dangerous to be left unchecked, that their constant wars and unpredictable nature posed a threat to the balance of the galaxy. The violent species, however, saw Earth as a potential resource, ripe for domination and control. But despite their arguments, the Council had reached a unanimous decision. Earth was to be exiled. They would be cast out of the galaxy, their presence erased from the cosmos, to never again interfere with the plans of the Council. The vote was scheduled for the next full moon of the galaxy's cycle. Across the cosmos, the news was already spreading. Some species rejoiced, certain that the decision would bring peace. Others feared the consequences, but none could predict the storm that was about to break. As the vote began, the representatives of each species took their seats in the vast, hollow chamber. The Council's floor stretched out in all directions, an expanse of dark metallic surfaces and floating holograms. At the center was a massive stone platform where the leaders stood. A single pulse of energy traveled through the room, signaling the start of the final vote. The fate of Earth was about to be sealed. The first vote was cast by the peaceful species. One by one, they spoke, their voices ringing out across the chamber, each expressing the same sentiment. Earth must be exiled. Their reasoning was simple. Humanity had no place in the future of the galaxy. They had shown themselves to be reckless, destructive, and unpredictable. With each vote, the tally grew higher, and the decision seemed inevitable. Next came the vote of the violent species. These were the ones who had long coveted Earth's resources, and they were not happy with the idea of the planet being exiled. Their voices echoed in the chamber, filled with anger and resentment. They argued that Earth could still serve a purpose, that its people could be controlled and manipulated. But as they cast their votes, it became clear that the majority had already decided. Earth was to be exiled. The final vote was announced. The Council had spoken. Earth would be cast from the galaxy, its fate sealed by the unanimous decision. The representatives of the various species exchanged glances, some satisfied, others uneasy. But none of them knew the truth. None of them knew what Earth had been doing in secret. For months, while the Council debated and decided, Earth had been preparing for this very moment. Hidden deep within the dark corners of the galaxy, far from the reach of the Council's prying eyes, humanity had begun to build. They had constructed massive warships, ships like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. These ships were armed with weapons so powerful that they could obliterate entire fleets in seconds. The technology was advanced, secretive, and unlike anything the aliens could comprehend. But the humans were not only preparing warships. They were preparing their soldiers, elite warriors who had been training for years, honing their skills, ready to face any threat. Earth's finest minds had been working on secret projects, developing technologies that could level the playing field between them and the far more advanced alien species. The humans were ready for the war that the Council had just ignited. And they would not go down quietly. As the final vote was cast, the Council members looked at each other with a sense of finality. Earth had been exiled. Their future was sealed, and nothing would change that. Or so they thought. The silence that followed the announcement was palpable. For a moment, no one spoke. The representatives sat in their seats, waiting for the Council to disband and the consequences of the vote to unfold. But just as the silence became unbearable, a low rumble echoed from deep within the galaxy. It started as a distant tremor, too small to notice at first. But then it grew. A strange, Powerful energy rippled through the cosmos, spreading outward from the farthest reaches of space. The members of the Galactic Council looked up, startled, as the holographic screens in front of them flickered. "What is this?" one of the alien leaders demanded, his voice trembling. "What is happening?" At first, they thought it was a glitch, a system failure. But the rumbling continued, growing louder, stronger. The lights above them flickered, then went out. The chamber was bathed in darkness. The council members began to whisper, fear creeping into their voices. "What is happening?" another asked, his voice rising in panic. Then, suddenly, the sky outside the chamber erupted in light. A massive ship appeared, breaking through the very fabric of space itself. It was unlike anything the council had ever seen. It was enormous, stretching across the sky like a shadow, its engines glowing with an otherworldly energy. The ship moved silently through the cosmos, like a predator stalking its prey. The members of the Galactic Council gasped, their eyes widening in disbelief. The ship was human. But how? How could humanity have built such a vessel? The answer came quickly, in the form of a message. A single, simple transmission broadcast across the galaxy: "We are Earth. And we are not done yet." The ship's engines roared to life as it surged forward, leaving the stunned council members in its wake. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Humanity had struck first. The vote had been decided, but the battle was far from over. The council, unprepared for the retaliation that was now coming, scrambled to respond. But it was too late. Humanity had already made its move. The galaxy would never be the same. And so, the first strike had been made. The council, in its arrogance, had underestimated Earth. They had thought humanity weak, small, insignificant. But now, as the human fleet gathered strength and momentum, the council began to realize the true power of the blue planet they had cast aside. The galaxy was about to witness humanity's rise. And it would never be the same again. The Galactic Council was still reeling from the shock of Earth's unexpected retaliation. The massive warship that had appeared from the void was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was a behemoth, a floating fortress that defied everything the Council thought it knew about humanity. The galaxy's most advanced species had been caught off guard, and now they were scrambling. They had believed that Earth's exile would be the end of humanity's influence, but instead, it had sparked something far greater. In the darkest corners of the galaxy, in places even the Council couldn't reach, humanity had prepared. The warship that had just emerged was not alone. It was part of a much larger fleet, one that had been built in secret, far from the watchful eyes of the Council. Each ship was designed to strike with deadly precision, armed with weapons capable of destroying entire alien fleets in seconds. The humans had been planning for this moment for years, secretly constructing their war machines and training their soldiers in the art of war. The fleet was ready, and now it was time for the galaxy to witness what humanity had become. On Earth, in the heart of the military command center, President Carter stood in front of a massive holographic map of the galaxy. His eyes were fixed on the fleet that was now in motion. He had known this day would come, the day when humanity would no longer be treated as a lesser species. The Council had thought Earth was weak, that the humans would crumble in the face of their decision. But they were wrong. Humanity had been underestimated for far too long. "Prepare to activate the secondary fleet," President Carter commanded. His voice was steady, unwavering. He had seen the planning, the construction, the dedication. His people were ready to fight for their place in the galaxy. The first wave of ships had already been launched, and the response from the Council was expected to be swift. But humanity had one advantage. The Council had no idea what they were truly up against. As the fleet made its way deeper into Council space, the first signs of conflict began to show. The alien patrols, unaware of the human threat, were decimated in minutes. Ships that had once been thought indestructible were torn apart by weapons designed specifically to counter their advanced shields. The alien forces scrambled to respond, sending wave after wave of ships to intercept. But humanity's fleet moved with precision, its commanders anticipating every move. Each battle was a crushing blow to the alien fleets, and with each victory, humanity's resolve grew stronger. The Galactic Council had underestimated Earth's ability to wage war. They had believed that humanity would fold under pressure, that their small fleet would be no match for the superior forces of the galaxy. But they hadn't counted on humanity's will to survive, to protect their home at any cost. As the battle raged on, one thing became clear: the Council was no longer in control. They had made a grave mistake by exiling Earth, and now they were paying the price. The first wave of human soldiers, highly trained and ready for combat, had also been deployed. Their mission was simple: take out key military targets and cripple the Council's ability to respond. They moved with the precision of predators, striking with overwhelming force and disappearing into the shadows before the enemy could react. Earth's finest warriors were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy, and they would stop at nothing to secure victory. On the Council's homeworld, panic spread as their military leaders realized the scale of the threat humanity posed. The invasion had already begun, and they were unprepared for what was unfolding. A massive fleet of human warships had entered their space, and the entire galaxy watched as humanity's forces clashed with those of the Council. The ships glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light as they engaged in battle, a testament to the advancements humanity had made in secret. The once unthinkable had become a reality. Earth was no longer the weak, insignificant planet the Council had believed it to be. It was a force to be reckoned with. As the alien ships were destroyed, and the battle raged on, the Council scrambled to respond. They activated their most powerful weapons, hoping to end the fight quickly. But humanity was prepared. The warships that had emerged from the dark corners of the galaxy were equipped with weapons that could disable the Council's ships in one shot. The tide of the battle began to shift, and the once unstoppable alien fleets were being forced to retreat. The galaxy's most powerful species were falling, one by one, to the onslaught of humanity's advanced technology and relentless determination. Humanity's counterattack had begun, and there was no turning back. The galaxy had underestimated them, but now it was clear. Earth was no longer a planet to be exiled. It was a new power in the galaxy, and its enemies would soon learn the consequences of underestimating humanity. As the battle escalated, President Carter watched the destruction unfold, his heart pounding with a mixture of pride and determination. The war was far from over, but humanity had struck the first blow. And now, the galaxy would know that Earth was no longer a place to be ignored. The Council had made a terrible mistake. The tide of war was turning, and Earth was at the center of it. No one in the galaxy was safe. Humanity had risen, and their strike was only the beginning. The battle for the galaxy had begun, and humanity was leading the charge. The Galactic Council had never expected Earth to strike first. The shockwaves of the human warship's emergence had not only sent fear through the Council's ranks, but had also shattered any illusion of control they once had over the galaxy. As the first wave of human warships tore through the Council's defenses, alien ships were destroyed in minutes. There was no time to react, no time to adjust. The superior firepower and tactics of humanity's fleet had caught the alien forces completely off guard. From the front lines to the rear, the Council's military was being obliterated. Each human ship was a monster, capable of launching destructive energy blasts that ripped apart enemy fleets in seconds. Alien vessels that had once been the pinnacle of technological power were now nothing more than debris floating in space. With each victory, the humans pressed forward, their warships cutting through the dark void like a hot knife through butter. The Council's response was swift but futile. Their forces were in disarray, their strategic plans falling apart as the humans outmaneuvered them at every turn. The alien fleets had been thrown into chaos, unable to mount an effective defense against the relentless human assault. But this was only the beginning. Humanity had prepared for this moment, had known that the Council would retaliate with everything they had. That's why, even as the human ships blasted their way through the galaxy, their commanders held their ground and kept pushing forward. They had a plan, a strategy that the Council could never have foreseen. As human warships approached the heart of the Council's territory, a new weapon was deployed. It was humanity's trump card, a game-changer that would send shockwaves through the galaxy. The humans had developed an energy weapon so powerful that it could disable entire fleets in one shot. The weapon was concealed within the largest of the human warships, a ship that looked more like a city than a battleship. As it approached the heart of the Council's defenses, its cannons powered up, ready to fire. The aliens watched in horror as the massive human ship aimed its weapon directly at their flagship. They attempted to raise shields, but it was too late. The energy blast from the human warship struck the Council's flagship with such force that the ship cracked in half, its shields unable to withstand the overwhelming power. In one devastating shot, the Council's most powerful vessel was destroyed, and with it, the last of their hope for victory. Panic spread across the galaxy as the news of the destruction of the flagship spread. The Council's military was in ruins, and their once imposing fleet had been scattered to the farthest reaches of space. The humans were unstoppable, their weaponry unmatched. As Earth's fleet continued its advance, the remaining Council forces made one last desperate attempt to regroup. They called upon their strongest warriors, elite squads trained for the most dangerous missions. These soldiers had been bred for combat, designed to crush any threat that came their way. But they had never faced anything like the humans. On a remote planet at the edge of the galaxy, a team of human special forces soldiers prepared for their mission. Their target was the last stronghold of the Council's military leadership. They were sent in to cripple the last line of defense and ensure the collapse of the Galactic Council's command. The soldiers moved quickly, silently, and with deadly precision. The elite alien warriors that stood in their way never saw them coming. The humans fought with a ferocity that stunned the alien forces. In a matter of hours, the stronghold fell, and with it, the remaining hope the Council had of holding onto their power. The war was turning in humanity's favor, and the Council was beginning to realize that they were no longer the ones in control. But even as humanity's fleet continued its push forward, the Council was far from defeated. They activated their final weapon, a doomsday device capable of destroying entire planets. If they couldn't win, they would make sure that humanity didn't either. The device, known as the Star Annihilator, was capable of creating a massive gravitational pull, swallowing entire solar systems in its wake. It was the Council's last resort, a weapon that could erase Earth and all of humanity's progress in an instant. But the humans had anticipated this move. President Carter, watching the war unfold from Earth's command center, knew what the Council was capable of. He had already prepared a countermeasure. Humanity's final strike was not just about defeating the Council. It was about securing their place in the galaxy for good. As the Star Annihilator powered up, the humans activated their own weapon. It was a long-range energy pulse, designed to disrupt the Star Annihilator's gravitational field and disable its core. The countdown to destruction was ticking, and both sides knew that the fate of the galaxy was hanging in the balance. As the human warships closed in on the device, the final battle began. The pulse cannon charged, and with a blinding flash of energy, it struck the Star Annihilator, disabling it before it could unleash its devastating power. The shockwave from the blast rippled through space, sending a tremor through the galaxy. The Star Annihilator, the last weapon of the Galactic Council, was destroyed. The war was over. The humans had won. The Galactic Council, broken and shattered, had no choice but to surrender. They had underestimated humanity at every turn, and now they would have to face the consequences. The galaxy would never be the same again. The humans had struck first, and they had proven that they were no longer a species to be ignored or cast aside. They were a force to be reckoned with. As the human warships made their final approach to the Council's homeworld, a new era dawned. The humans were not only survivors, they were now rulers of their destiny, and the galaxy would have to learn to respect Earth and its people. The first strike had been made, and humanity had come out victorious. The Council had underestimated them, and now the galaxy would be forced to reckon with the consequences as the human warships continued to tear through the galaxy. The once unified Galactic Council began to fracture. The devastating defeat of their fleets, the destruction of their flagship, and the annihilation of their doomsday weapon had left the Council scrambling for answers. Panic spread like wildfire among the Council members, and as the galactic military leaders scrambled to regroup, an unexpected twist unfolded. Alien species who had once pledged their allegiance to the Council began to question their loyalty. The sheer power and determination of humanity had left them in awe. What had once seemed like a small, insignificant planet on the edge of the galaxy had now become a mighty force, an unstoppable juggernaut that was cutting through their empire like a blade through butter. And as humanity's fleet moved closer to the heart of the Council's territory, many alien species began to realize that siding with Earth might be their only chance for survival. The first signs of rebellion began to emerge in the most unexpected places. On a remote planet in the Outer Rim, the population had long been subjugated by the Council's oppressive rule. They had suffered under the weight of the Galactic Council's bureaucracy for centuries, their voices never heard, their suffering ignored. But now, with Earth's fleet advancing, something inside them stirred. They saw the destruction of the Council's military might as a sign of hope, a chance to break free from their chains. The rebellion began quietly, but it quickly spread. Discontented leaders, tired of the Council's iron fist, contacted humanity's forces, offering their support in exchange for liberation. On the Council's homeworld, word of the growing rebellion spread like wildfire. The once untouchable Galactic Empire was now crumbling, and the factions within the Council began to turn on each other. Some alien species, realizing that their days of dominance were numbered, sought to negotiate with humanity. They saw the writing on the wall. Humanity wasn't going to be driven back into the shadows, and the Council was no longer in control of their own destiny. Meanwhile, on the front lines, humanity's forces had become more efficient, more deadly with every battle. Their warships were now in every corner of the galaxy, their soldiers infiltrating the heart of Council-controlled worlds. Earth's military had proven itself a worthy opponent, but the human forces were not just skilled in war, they were driven by something far more powerful, their will to survive and protect their home. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long. The news of the growing rebellion spread like a virus. More alien species, once loyal to the Council, began to defect. The realization was dawning that the Council was no longer the dominant power it had once been. Humanity had broken their chains, and now other species were doing the same. As alien factions began to rise up, the Council's once imposing military found itself stretched thin, fighting not just against humanity's forces but against its own former allies. The galaxy was descending into chaos, and the Council had no one to blame but themselves. On the Council's homeworld, the Council leaders convened in a last-ditch effort to salvage the situation. They had no idea how to respond to the rebellion. Their fleets were decimated, and their power was crumbling. Desperate, they turned to their remaining loyalists, who still controlled a portion of the galaxy. But their power was fading, and as the rebellion spread, more and more alien species joined the growing human-led movement. At the same time, Earth's forces were not just fighting a war, they were winning hearts and minds. Humanity's story was being broadcast across the galaxy, and the message was clear. Earth was a force to be reckoned with, and anyone who stood against them would fall. The leadership of Earth had proven their might on the battlefield, but now they were showing the galaxy their moral superiority. They weren't fighting to conquer, they were fighting to protect their home, their people, and their place in the galaxy. And that made all the difference. As more alien species defected, the war shifted in humanity's favor. The Council's forces were now fractured, their leadership divided, and their once imposing military was crumbling. Earth's soldiers were no longer fighting alone. They had a growing number of allies, and together, they began to push back against the remaining loyalist factions. The rebellion had begun. On a distant planet, one of the Council's military strongholds, the rebellion reached its boiling point. The resistance fighters, armed with Earth's advanced technology and weapons, stormed the stronghold, overwhelming the alien defenses. The battle raged for hours, but the tide had already turned. The Council's forces were no match for the combined might of humanity's soldiers and their new allies. As the battle raged on, the remaining Council leaders began to realize just how badly they had miscalculated. They had thought that humanity was nothing more than a minor inconvenience, a small, primitive species that could be exiled and forgotten. But they were wrong. Humanity was not just a force to be reckoned with. They were a revolution, a wave of change sweeping through the galaxy. The final battle was drawing near, and the Council was on the brink of collapse. The rebellion had gained momentum, and the galaxy was shifting in favor of humanity. As Earth's fleet continued its march across the galaxy, the Council found itself with few allies, no military strength, and no hope. The rebellion was no longer a distant dream. It was a reality, and humanity was leading the charge. The galaxy would never be the same. The Council's grip on the galaxy was slipping, and the galaxy's people were beginning to see that humanity was not just a threat to be destroyed. They were a force to be embraced. The revolution had begun, and humanity would not stop until they had secured their place among the stars. The rebellion had ignited, and the fire of change could not be extinguished. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Humanity's warships, once thought to be no match for the mighty fleets of the Galactic Council, were now the galaxy's most feared weapon. What had started as a simple act of defiance had transformed into a full-scale revolution, shaking the very foundations of the galaxy's power. As humanity's warships ravaged the Council's remaining fleets and alien species defected to their side, a chilling realization spread across the galaxy. Earth was no longer just a planet to be ignored. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they had something the Council could never have imagined: an unbreakable will to survive and the drive to protect their home at any cost. As Earth's fleets continued their victorious march, humanity's leaders made a final, fateful decision. It was time to unleash their ultimate weapon, one that would make the galaxy tremble and ensure their place in the future. The decision came down from the highest level of command. President Carter, having seen the devastation of the war, knew that humanity needed a decisive edge. For years, Earth's brightest minds had been working in secret on a weapon so powerful that it could change the course of the entire war. This weapon was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. It wasn't just a ship or a weapon. It was a living, breathing entity, a soldier crafted from the finest human minds, enhanced with ancient technology and a resolve as strong as steel. The weapon was a human soldier, the product of years of experimentation and development, trained to be Earth's ultimate defender. His name was Isaac, a man whose DNA had been altered to enhance his physical abilities and mental fortitude to superhuman levels. He was not just a soldier. He was the weapon Earth had created to turn the tide of the war. Isaac had undergone intense training and augmentation, merging human resilience with cutting-edge technology. His armor, forged from rare alloys and ancient human technology, was nearly indestructible, capable of withstanding direct blasts from the Council's most advanced weapons. His mind was sharp, calculating, and strategic, able to analyze a battlefield in seconds and make decisions that could change the course of a fight. Isaac was more than a soldier. He was Earth's answer to the Council's best warriors, and he would lead humanity's final strike against the Galactic Council. As the battle for the galaxy raged on, Isaac was deployed to the front lines. His first mission was to infiltrate the heart of the Council's military command and take out their last remaining stronghold. The mission was impossible. The stronghold was protected by the most advanced alien technology, and the Council had gathered its finest soldiers to defend it. But Isaac was no ordinary soldier. He was human, yes, but he was more than that. He was a symbol of humanity's unbreakable will. As he made his way toward the stronghold, the galaxy's most fearsome warriors watched in disbelief. They had never seen anything like him. Isaac moved with incredible speed, his movements a blur as he outmaneuvered the alien soldiers who tried to stop him. With each step, he tore through their defenses, leaving nothing but destruction in his wake. His weaponry was like nothing they had ever encountered. With a single blast, entire enemy units were disintegrated. With each strike, Isaac left the Council's forces reeling, unsure of how to stop him. As he reached the heart of the stronghold, the alien defenders mounted their final defense. They activated their most powerful weapons, expecting Isaac to fall. But what they didn't know was that Isaac was prepared for this moment. His armor was designed to absorb and reflect their energy blasts, and his body had been enhanced to withstand even the most devastating strikes. He moved with precision, using their own weapons against them, as he advanced through their final defenses. The alien generals watching the battle were in shock. They had sent their best soldiers, their strongest weapons, but nothing could stop Isaac. In the blink of an eye, he breached their command center, and with a single swing of his weapon, he cut down the last of the Council's leaders. The stronghold fell. The Council had lost its final foothold in the galaxy. Isaac stood in the heart of their command center, a symbol of humanity's power, their resilience, and their unwillingness to back down. The galaxy would remember this moment. Humanity had fought for its place, and they had won. As Isaac returned to the front lines, humanity's fleet surged forward, its momentum unstoppable. The tide of the war had shifted. The Galactic Council, once a powerful force that had controlled the galaxy for centuries, was now on the verge of collapse. Their best warriors had been defeated, their strongest defenses shattered, and their command structure had been decimated. The rebellion, sparked by humanity's first strike, had now turned into a full-scale victory. The galaxy was no longer under the Council's rule. Isaac's victory was not just a personal triumph. It was a symbol of what humanity had become. A species that had once been dismissed as insignificant had now risen to power, and nothing would stop them. As the war came to an end, the surviving Council members met in secret, their faces grim. They had no choice but to negotiate with humanity. The rebellion had succeeded. Earth had proven that they were not to be underestimated. Humanity had become the galaxy's new force, and no one could deny it. As President Carter stood in front of the massive warship that had led humanity's final strike, he knew that the battle was over. The war was won. Earth had triumphed, not because of their weapons or their technology, but because of something far greater, humanity's indomitable spirit. The galaxy had been changed forever, and humanity would never again be seen as weak or insignificant. Isaac, the weapon born of humanity's darkest hour, was the key to their victory. He had led them to triumph, and now, Earth would stand at the helm of a new era, a new age of human dominance in the galaxy. The galaxy had come to a standstill. The war that had once seemed so certain in favor of the Galactic Council was now spiraling out of control. Humanity had struck with a force no one had anticipated, and the galaxy was reeling from the shockwaves of their relentless advance. No one could have predicted how quickly the Council's power had crumbled, how swiftly their once mighty fleets had been torn apart by Earth's technological superiority and tactical brilliance. Humanity's victory was not just on the battlefield. It was in the hearts and minds of the galaxy's people. As Earth's fleet moved from one victory to the next, the once loyal allies of the Council began to rethink their alliances. They saw the writing on the wall. The Council had failed them. Their leadership had faltered, their military shattered, and their threats had proved hollow. Earth, on the other hand, had proven itself to be more than capable of handling the might of the galaxy's greatest powers. And so, one by one, alien species that had once supported the Council began to distance themselves, unsure of where their future lay in a galaxy that was now firmly under humanity's shadow. The rebellious factions that had once quietly resisted the Council's rule were now emboldened by humanity's success. They began to unite under one banner, the banner of Earth. The rebellion was no longer a small group of disillusioned aliens. It had become a galactic movement, a force capable of overthrowing the Council for good. The galaxy's greatest powers, now scattered and broken, could do nothing to stop the tide of change sweeping across their worlds. The Council's final strongholds, the last remnants of their once imposing empire, were falling one by one. Each victory brought humanity closer to the ultimate goal, the complete collapse of the Galactic Council. Yet even as humanity's power continued to grow, the Council refused to accept defeat. Their leaders, scattered and desperate, convened in secret, plotting their next move. They still controlled a vast portion of the galaxy, and they were not ready to give up without a fight. But as the final battle loomed, the Council's forces began to realize the harsh truth. Their greatest weapon had already been destroyed. Isaac, the human weapon who had single-handedly torn through their defenses, was now a living legend. No amount of reinforcements, no amount of tactics, could match the sheer force of will that humanity had shown. As the last Council stronghold fell, the remaining leaders retreated to their capital, a city on the edge of the galaxy. They made their final plea to the galaxy, an offer of peace, of negotiation, of compromise. They had nothing left to fight with but their words. And even those were no longer enough to sway the galaxy's population. The galaxy had already made its decision. Earth, the planet once ignored, once discarded as insignificant, was now the heart of the galaxy. The Council, unable to resist any longer, agreed to humanity's terms. Their surrender marked the end of an era, the collapse of an empire that had controlled the galaxy for centuries. The galaxy was no longer under the rule of the Council. It was now under the rule of Earth. The final moments of the Council's reign were marked by chaos. Their leaders, stripped of power, were forced to answer for their crimes. The once proud empire had crumbled, and its leaders were now the ones who were hunted. The galaxy watched as humanity, once the underdog, now took its place at the center of the universe. As the dust settled and the last remnants of the Council were swept away, a new order emerged. Earth, with its unwavering resolve, had proven itself to be the galaxy's new power. No longer would humanity be seen as insignificant. They had conquered not just with their military might, but with their heart, their determination, and their willingness to fight for their place among the stars. The galaxy would remember the day humanity rose to power. It was a day of triumph, a day of revolution, a day when Earth proved that no one, no matter how powerful, could ever truly ignore them again. As President Carter stood before the newly established Galactic Council, now composed of representatives from Earth and its new allies, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. From the moment the Council had voted to exile Earth, to the first strike against their forces, to the final collapse of the Galactic Empire, humanity had shown the galaxy its strength, its resolve, and its unshakable will to survive. The galaxy was no longer the Council's playground. It was humanity's to shape, to lead, to protect. As the new Council was formed, with Earth at its head, President Carter addressed the galaxy. Today, we stand as equals. Today, we shape our future. No longer will we be cast aside. No longer will we be underestimated. We are humanity, and we will not be ignored. The galaxy stood still, listening, as humanity's voice echoed across the stars. It was a new era, an era of Earth, an era of humanity's dominance. The galaxy would never be the same again. The dust had barely settled from the final collapse of the Galactic Council, and already, the galaxy was shifting beneath humanity's feet. Earth's victory was complete, but what came next was more complicated than anyone could have predicted. With the Council's fall, the galaxy had been thrown into a state of uncertainty. Alien species that had once served the Council now looked to humanity for leadership, but the challenge was clear. Earth had to prove itself worthy of its newfound power. President Carter stood in front of a massive holographic map, his face grave as he surveyed the galaxy. Humanity had won the war, but the fight for control of the galaxy was far from over. The rebels, those who had fought alongside humanity, now looked to Earth for guidance, and the once loyal allies of the Council were now wary, unsure of what this new era would bring. They had expected Earth to crumble once the Council had been defeated, but humanity's resilience had exceeded their expectations. However, the true test was yet to come. Deep within the heart of the galaxy, remnants of the Council's loyalists had retreated to a heavily fortified planet, a planet that housed the galaxy's most destructive weapon. It was an ancient device, a weapon of mass destruction capable of obliterating entire fleets in a single strike. The Council had kept it hidden, its existence known only to a few. Now, as the galaxy's power was in flux, the surviving Council members had made a final, desperate decision. They would activate the weapon, unleashing chaos and fear across the galaxy in a last-ditch attempt to regain control. The stakes had never been higher. If the weapon was allowed to fire, it would not just decimate humanity's forces, it could destroy entire planets, including Earth itself. President Carter knew this. He also knew that the galaxy's fragile peace could shatter at any moment if the weapon wasn't neutralized. Earth had only one option: take the gamble and destroy the weapon before it could be unleashed. But this would not be easy. The weapon was housed on a planet heavily guarded by the last of the Council's most loyal warriors. The planet was surrounded by a deadly energy field, one that could disintegrate any ship that came too close. Humanity's finest warships, despite their power, would be vulnerable in this environment. The gamble was clear. A single ship, a single soldier, would have to infiltrate the planet's defenses and disable the weapon from within. It was a suicide mission, one that had no guarantee of success. But Earth had no choice. Isaac, the human weapon who had turned the tide of the war, was chosen for the mission. He was humanity's best hope, and he would be the one to take the fight directly to the heart of the enemy. As Isaac prepared for the mission, he knew that his life might be the cost of Earth's future. The energy field surrounding the planet would make any conventional approach impossible. The only chance of success was to infiltrate through an uncharted route, a narrow path through the field that had been discovered only through human ingenuity. The risks were enormous, and the potential for failure was high. Yet, Isaac remained resolute. He had fought for Earth's survival, and he was willing to do whatever it took to ensure that humanity's place in the galaxy was secure. As he boarded the ship that would carry him into the heart of the enemy's territory, President Carter gave him one final command: do what you do best, win. The fate of humanity rests in your hands. Isaac's ship took off, entering the energy field surrounding the planet. The ship's shields flared as it absorbed the intense energy, narrowly avoiding a catastrophic collision with the field. Every second felt like an eternity as Isaac guided the ship through the deadly maze, each twist and turn a potential death trap. He knew that if he failed, the galaxy would be plunged into chaos. As the ship passed through the final barrier and landed on the planet, Isaac prepared for the hardest part of the mission. The weapon was buried deep within a massive underground facility, surrounded by the fiercest of the Council's loyalists. They had expected an attack, and they had prepared for it. Isaac knew this would not be a simple infiltration. As he stepped out of the ship, his eyes narrowed. The planet's surface was a barren wasteland, a reflection of the devastation that would be unleashed if the weapon was allowed to fire. He moved with purpose, his mind focused on the task at hand. The mission was clear: destroy the weapon before it could unleash its fury on the galaxy. As Isaac made his way through the facility's outer defenses, the resistance was fierce. The Loyalists fought with everything they had, but they were no match for Isaac's speed, strength, and precision. With every step, Isaac eliminated the obstacles in his path, but he knew time was running out. The weapon was only moments away from being activated. The deeper he went into the facility, the stronger the resistance became. Isaac's every movement was calculated, his every strike designed to incapacitate, not kill. He knew that the longer he fought, the more time he gave the Loyalists to activate the weapon. He had no choice but to press on, despite the mounting resistance. Finally, Isaac reached the heart of the facility, the chamber where the weapon was stored. The device was enormous, pulsing with energy, its core ready to unleash destruction across the galaxy. Isaac knew he had little time left. He activated the explosive charges that would disable the weapon's core. But just as he was about to make his escape, a massive explosion rocked the facility. The Loyalists had launched their final counterattack, trapping Isaac inside the chamber with the weapon. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized that the mission had become a race against time. The weapon was moments away from firing, and if he didn't act fast, Earth would be destroyed. Isaac's training kicked in. He was the weapon, and he would not fail. In a final, desperate move, Isaac dove toward the weapon's core and, with a calculated precision, planted the final charge that would neutralize it. The explosion rang out, and the weapon's power was extinguished in a flash of light. Isaac's body was thrown back by the blast, his world going black as he lost consciousness. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Had humanity's gamble paid off? The silence was deafening. Then, a transmission was received. Isaac's ship had sent a signal back to Earth. The weapon was destroyed. Isaac had succeeded. The galaxy stood still in awe as the news spread. Humanity had once again proven that they were not a species to be underestimated. They had gambled with everything, and they had won. The Council's last hope had been extinguished, and Earth had secured its place in the galaxy. The final victory was within reach, but the galaxy still held its breath. The destruction of the Council's ultimate weapon had shifted the tide in humanity's favor, but the final battle was yet to be fought. The Galactic Council was no more. The last of their forces had been obliterated, their strongholds burned to the ground, and their leaders either captured or destroyed. But as the galaxy reeled from the shock of humanity's victory, one final, terrifying truth was revealed. The Galactic Council, in its desperation, had secretly constructed a failsafe. A device hidden deep within the heart of the galaxy, one that could bring everything humanity had fought for to ruin. This device, known only as the Countdown, was a superweapon of unimaginable power. If activated, it would send a pulse through the galaxy, erasing entire star systems and rendering all technological advancements useless. It was the Council's last, desperate effort to prevent humanity from taking control of the galaxy. And it was now ready to fire. Earth's fleet had just begun to celebrate its hard-earned victory when they received the transmission. A warning. The Countdown was active. President Carter, still standing at the helm of humanity's military forces, was immediately informed of the threat. He knew what this meant. If the Countdown was allowed to launch, the galaxy would fall into chaos. Humanity's hard-won victory would be undone in an instant. There was no time to waste. The Countdown's pulse could be triggered at any moment, and once it was unleashed, it would be unstoppable. Earth's finest minds quickly calculated the danger. The weapon was housed on a planet at the very edge of the galaxy, heavily guarded by a remnant faction of loyalists who had managed to survive the Council's downfall. Humanity had no choice but to strike first, or risk losing everything. President Carter's voice crackled through the comms as he issued his orders to the fleet. We have one chance to stop this. We must move quickly, and we must move as one. The Countdown cannot be allowed to fire. As Earth's fleet moved toward the coordinates of the Countdown, tension mounted. The galaxy was at the mercy of this single device. Every fleet in humanity's command was on high alert, preparing for the final confrontation that would determine the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. The Countdown was housed on a massive, heavily fortified planet known as Calyx. The planet's surface was littered with defense structures, shields so powerful that they could withstand even the most advanced weaponry. It was a fortress, and within it, the Countdown's core lay in wait, ready to launch the pulse that would erase all that humanity had achieved. The Countdown timer, which had been running for years, was ticking down to 0. Every second that passed brought humanity closer to destruction. But there was hope. Isaac, the human weapon who had already turned the tide of the war, was called into action once again. He had been humanity's greatest asset, and now, his strength and cunning would be tested like never before. His mission was simple: infiltrate Calyx, disable the Countdown, and save the galaxy. But the path to success was far from clear. As Isaac's ship approached the planet, the full scale of the Countdown's defense systems became apparent. Waves of enemy ships launched from the planet's surface, each one armed with weapons that could obliterate entire fleets. Earth's warships engaged the enemy forces in a brutal battle, but Isaac knew that time was running out. He had to act quickly. The planet's surface was too heavily fortified for a direct assault, so Isaac made the decision to go in alone. Infiltration was their only chance. With his ship locked onto a narrow entry point, Isaac's ship dove into the planet's atmosphere, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. His heart raced as the world outside his ship twisted and burned, but he kept his focus, knowing that the fate of the galaxy rested on his shoulders. As Isaac descended toward Calyx's surface, the sky above erupted in fire as the enemy launched a final barrage. He navigated through the storm of explosions and laser fire, his ship's shields glowing as they absorbed the impact. He landed on the surface of the planet, and the moment his boots hit the ground, he was moving, silent, swift, and unstoppable. The loyalists who guarded the Countdown were waiting, but they had underestimated Isaac. He moved through their defenses with ruthless precision, his enhanced abilities giving him an edge that no enemy could match. The loyalists, who had once thought themselves invincible, were now crumbling beneath the onslaught of humanity's finest. As Isaac reached the heart of the facility, he knew the Countdown timer was near 0. There was no time to waste. The core of the Countdown was heavily guarded, but Isaac cut through the last of the defenders with ease. Finally, he reached the control center. The Countdown timer was flashing, ticking down toward its final seconds. Isaac's hands moved quickly, hacking into the core system, bypassing layers of security that had been designed to stop him. But he had prepared for this. He had studied the Countdown's protocols, understood its design, and knew exactly how to shut it down. With mere moments left, Isaac initiated the final override sequence. The lights in the control room flickered as the system came to life, but the countdown timer continued its relentless march toward zero. In those last few seconds, Isaac's mind raced. Could he do it? Would he succeed? The countdown reached the final second, and then, silence. The countdown froze. The pulse had been stopped. The galaxy had been saved. Isaac collapsed to his knees, exhausted, but victorious. The countdown had been disabled, and the galaxy had been spared from certain destruction. The news of his success spread quickly throughout the fleet, and Earth's forces erupted into a cheer that echoed across the stars. Humanity had done it. The countdown was no more. The war was finally over. The galaxy, once on the brink of annihilation, had been saved by the very species that had been written off as insignificant. As Isaac stood up, his mission complete, he looked out across the planet. The war was over, but the galaxy's future was just beginning. Humanity had taken its place at the center of the galaxy, and there was no turning back. The countdown to Earth's rise had ended, but the countdown to a new era had only just begun. The galaxy had fallen silent in the aftermath of humanity's victory. The destruction of the countdown device had brought an end to the war, but it was not the end of the challenges humanity would face. President Carter stood before the newly formed Galactic Council, the first council to represent not just Earth but the many alien species who had joined humanity's side in the final battle. The once unified Galactic Council was now a fractured, weakened shell of its former self. Earth had not just defeated them, it had reshaped the galaxy. As President Carter looked out at the representatives of the new council, he felt a strange sense of unease. Yes, humanity had triumphed, but there were still scars from the war, and the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted so drastically that no one, not even Earth's leaders, knew what would happen next. The old order was gone, and the future was now in humanity's hands. The Council, once the symbol of unchallenged power, was now forced to accept Earth's dominance. But there were still those who would not accept this new reality. As the final remnants of the Council's loyalists were hunted down, rumors spread like wildfire throughout the galaxy. A new faction was rising, one that believed Earth's rise was an abomination. These individuals, exiled from the old Council and disillusioned by its fall, were not prepared to let Earth walk unchallenged into the future. They believed that Earth had upset the natural order of the galaxy. Their mission was clear: to dethrone humanity and restore the old order. This faction, which called themselves the True Council, was born from the ashes of the fallen Galactic Empire. They were a coalition of the most dangerous and ruthless alien species in the galaxy, and they had one goal: to destroy Earth and reclaim their position at the top of the galactic hierarchy. As their numbers grew, so did their influence. The True Council was organized, strategic, and more dangerous than any enemy humanity had faced before. While humanity celebrated its victory, this shadow organization quietly began to infiltrate key positions within the new council. They fed on the resentment of those who had lost their status under Earth's rule, and they planted seeds of doubt among the alien species that had once supported humanity. The True Council was a threat humanity had never anticipated, an insidious power that threatened to undo everything humanity had fought for. It began as whispers in the dark corners of the galaxy. At first, the new council dismissed it as a fringe group, an aftershock of a dying empire. But soon, their influence spread beyond the shadows. Sabotage, assassinations, and covert operations became their tools. The True Council's forces were everywhere, operating in the background, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The galaxy had fallen into an uneasy peace, but cracks were beginning to show. One by one, planets that had been liberated by humanity began to experience mysterious attacks. Ships were disappearing in the outer reaches of space, and entire colonies had been destroyed without warning. President Carter, still at the helm of Earth's government, had learned of these developments in a private briefing. His heart sank as he realized the true extent of the danger. The True Council had infiltrated, and they were preparing for something far worse than anything humanity had ever faced. This was not just a war, it was a war for the soul of the galaxy. Humanity's triumph had awakened a dark force, one that had been waiting in the wings for centuries, plotting and scheming. The true council had made their move, and it was only a matter of time before they struck with full force. President Carter knew that the only way to stop them was to root out their influence, to expose their plans and prevent them from executing their ultimate strike. Earth's victory had been hard-won, but now it was at risk of being undone. The true council's master plan was beginning to unfold. Their primary goal was to reclaim control of the galaxy's most powerful weapon, the same weapon that the council had once used to maintain their iron grip on power. This weapon, known as the Heart of the Void, was capable of drawing energy from the very fabric of space itself. If activated, it would have the power to destroy entire star systems, wiping out entire planets with a single pulse. The Heart of the Void was believed to be lost, its location a mystery hidden in the deepest recesses of space. But the true council had discovered its location, and now they were preparing to unleash its devastating power. Humanity's new council, still in its infancy, had no idea what was coming. The heart of the galaxy was about to be ripped open by the very force that had once ruled it. Earth's leadership moved quickly. President Carter, aware of the threat, ordered the creation of a special task force, an elite group of humans and their allies who would risk everything to find and destroy the Heart of the Void before the true council could use it. This mission, like all those that had come before, was a gamble. If they failed, the galaxy would be plunged into darkness once again. And yet, Earth's resolve was unshaken. Isaac, humanity's weapon, was once again called upon. His success in previous missions had made him a living legend, and now he was humanity's only hope. The task force had gathered, prepared to launch their most dangerous mission yet, to find the Heart of the Void and stop the true council from claiming it. But the galaxy was not as it had once been. The stakes had never been higher, and the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. As Isaac and his team prepared for the journey, they knew that they were not just fighting to protect Earth. They were fighting to protect the galaxy itself. The true council's plans were just beginning, and they would stop at nothing to see their vision of galactic supremacy realized. But humanity had already proven that it could rise above any challenge. The countdown had started again, this time, for the fate of the galaxy. The galaxy was teetering on the brink of a new era, and the final act in humanity's rise was now at hand. The true council had made its move, and the fate of the galaxy was once again in the balance. Isaac and the elite task force were on a desperate mission to find and destroy the Heart of the Void, the most destructive weapon ever created by the Galactic Council. Humanity had already proven its might by overthrowing the Council, but now they faced an even greater challenge. The Heart of the Void was the ultimate weapon, a creation so powerful that its activation would shatter entire star systems and erase civilizations from existence. The true Council, a remnant of the fallen empire, had discovered its location and was determined to use it to restore their reign of terror over the galaxy. Earth's greatest minds had worked tirelessly to prevent this day, but now, the time had come to take action. As Isaac led the team through the vast, uncharted reaches of space, the weight of their mission hung heavy on their shoulders. The galaxy's future depended on them. They knew that they were walking into the lion's den, that the true council would not let them succeed without a fight. The heart of the galaxy, where the Heart of the Void was hidden, was a place few had dared to venture. It was located in the deepest and most dangerous part of space, beyond the reach of conventional travel. The space around it was riddled with strange anomalies, gravitational forces that twisted time and space itself. The task force, led by Isaac, had no choice but to venture into this unknown, to risk everything to prevent the true council from awakening the weapon that could destroy all they had fought for. As the ship descended into the depths of space, the crew felt the tension rise. The closer they got, the more the galaxy seemed to push back against them. Their sensors flickered, strange readings flashing on the screens. The further they went, the more distorted the space around them became. It felt as though the very fabric of reality was beginning to tear. Isaac, unfazed, led his team with cold precision, knowing that there was no turning back. As they neared the coordinates of the Heart of the Void, the ship's systems began to fail. The interference from the anomalies was too much for their technology to handle. But Isaac had anticipated this. With his enhanced skills and training, he bypassed the failing systems and guided the team to their destination. The heart of the void was located in the ruins of an ancient station, once used by the Council's greatest scientists. It was a place of unimaginable power, designed to house the galaxy's deadliest weapon. The station was abandoned, silent, its lights flickering ominously as the team made their way inside. The air was thick with the weight of history, with the legacy of an empire that had once ruled the galaxy. As they moved deeper into the station, the crew encountered signs of the true Council's influence: hidden traps, encrypted security systems, and the remains of those who had tried to stop them. The journey was perilous, each step taking them closer to the heart of the weapon, and the closer they got, the more Isaac could feel the weight of the task at hand. The true Council's loyalists were not far behind, and they would stop at nothing to ensure that the heart of the void was activated. The station's corridors were labyrinthine, filled with puzzles and obstacles designed to test anyone who dared to enter. But Isaac, with his unparalleled training and enhanced abilities, led his team with relentless precision. Every obstacle, every challenge, was met with quick thinking and decisive action. But the deeper they went, the more they realized that the true challenge lay not in the station's defenses, but in the heart itself. Finally, they reached the central chamber, where the heart of the void was contained. The room was massive, its walls lined with energy conduits and ancient technology. The weapon pulsed with a dark energy, its power emanating from every corner of the room. The true Council's loyalists were waiting. They had anticipated this moment, and now they were prepared to do whatever it took to stop Isaac and his team from reaching the weapon. A fierce battle erupted, laser blasts lighting up the chamber as both sides fought for control of the heart. Isaac, unrelenting, moved through the chaos with a singular focus: destroy the heart of the void before it could be activated. His team fought alongside him, their determination as strong as his own. The true Council's forces were powerful, but they were no match for the combined strength of humanity's finest warriors. As the battle raged on, Isaac finally reached the heart's core. The power radiating from it was almost overwhelming, a force unlike anything he had ever felt. The countdown to its activation was nearly complete. But Isaac had one final trick up his sleeve. With a single, precise strike, he activated the detonation sequence that would disable the heart forever. The energy within the heart destabilized, the weapon's core beginning to implode. The station shook violently, its structure beginning to collapse as the weapon's power imploded on itself. Isaac and his team barely made it out of the station before it erupted in a brilliant explosion, a shockwave that rippled through the galaxy. The heart of the void was no more. The galaxy had been saved once again. As Isaac and his team returned to Earth, the news of their success spread like wildfire. The true Council's remnants were crushed, and the galaxy was finally at peace. But as President Carter looked out over the horizon, watching the stars of the galaxy, he knew that Earth's journey was far from over. Humanity had proven its strength, its resilience, but there was still work to be done. The galaxy had been saved, but Earth's true rise had only just begun. As Earth began to rebuild and reassert its place in the galaxy, President Carter knew that they had just begun to scratch the surface of what they could achieve. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a beacon of hope and strength in the galaxy. And humanity, once the underdog, was now the force to be reckoned with. The war was over, but the rise of Earth had only just begun.